Not all pain is loud. Some pain settles into silence, while other pain hardens into strength. Some people learn how to appear fine simply to avoid worrying anyone, but beneath the control, the emotional distance, and the extreme self-reliance, there is always a story. Carl Jung warned us about this. When pain is not understood, it does not disappear. It hides and turns into behavior. And what makes it worse is that almost no one notices. People judge instead. In this video, you will discover the 13 hidden traits of those who have endured too much, why they behave so differently, sometimes even confusing themselves, and most importantly, how silent pain can be transformed into awareness, into conscious choice, and into healing. Stay with me until the end, because this may change how you see yourself and how you see the people you care about. Some scars never appear on the body, but they are present in other ways, in the way someone looks at the world, in how long it takes them to trust, in the sudden desire to disappear, even while surrounded by others. Some wounds leave no visible marks, yet quietly shape everything within. Old pain does not announce itself. It becomes a way of living. It becomes silence where words should exist. It becomes rigidity where openness once lived. Sometimes, the person forgets they are carrying something at all. They only know they are tired, that everything requires more effort than it should, that life, for reasons they cannot explain, feels heavier. Carl Jung described trauma as a psychic wound that continues to bleed inward when ignored. But he also believed this wound could become a passage, not to erase what hurt, but to transform what still feels threatening. When pain is truly heard, it does not turn into a life sentence. It becomes awareness. The problem is that almost no one teaches us how to listen to pain. The world rewards performance, not reflection. And so those who have suffered deeply learn how to cope. They wear masks, create emotional shortcuts, and hide. They continue living, sometimes even smiling. Yet something inside remains on high alert, as if any small touch could reopen what barely healed. You may recognize yourself in some of these traits, or you may think of someone you love who suddenly makes more sense. Either way, the goal here is not to diagnose or label anyone. It is to approach life with more empathy, more presence, and less guilt. Because every behavior carries a history. No trait appears without reason. If at any moment during this video you feel a tightness in your throat or the urge to take a deeper breath, that is not accidental. It is simply your inner world recognizing something familiar. And that recognition alone is already a meaningful step. Some people learned very early that depending on others was unsafe, that asking for help led to disappointment, that trusting someone could result in humiliation or abandonment. As a result, the psyche creates a solution. The person becomes self-sufficient in every way, strong, decisive, seemingly unbreakable, yet internally exhausted. Carl Jung spoke about the false self, a structure built by the ego to survive when authenticity feels dangerous. This structure protects, but it also isolates. The individual grows accustomed to carrying everything alone, and the world, without realizing it, begins to believe they can handle it all. But no one should have to. This is why the first trait of those who have suffered too much is hyper-independence. It is not maturity. It is an old wound. From the outside, it may appear impressive. On the inside, it is heavy. The person avoids showing pain but still feels it, avoids asking for comfort while deeply needing it. They may not know how anymore, or they may feel shame, or they may no longer remember what trust without fear feels like. This rigidity extends into relationships, friendships, and work. Life becomes performance. Everything becomes self-control. And there is a cost. The chest tightens. Touch feels threatening. Rest feels undeserved. Even among people, the individual feels alone. Because hyper-independence is not freedom. It is a locked prison built from fear of being abandoned again. The second trait often seen in those who have suffered deeply is excessive empathy. At first glance, this seems like a strength, and often it is. But when empathy becomes a survival tool, it shifts from a quality into a coping mechanism. Some people, even as children, learn to scan their environment constantly. They sensed tension before it surfaced. They noticed tone, silence, subtle changes. Their sensitivity sharpened so much that they learned to feel others before understanding themselves. This heightened empathy did not develop from comfort. It grew out of necessity. It may have come from anticipating an unstable parent, avoiding emotional explosions, or holding peace together at home while sacrificing personal needs. Jung described projection as placing onto others what we have not yet faced within ourselves. Often, those who feel deeply for everyone are trying, without realizing it, to care for their own unprocessed pain through others. They become the supporter, the advisor, the reliable presence. But beneath the constant giving lies deep exhaustion. Those who feel for everyone often forget themselves. Empathy in this form can become an escape, a way to avoid facing personal pain because carrying others feels easier than facing one's own wounds. Over time, this leads to unbalanced relationships. One gives endlessly while the other takes. Listening becomes a way to avoid self-reflection. Sensitivity turns into overload. When usefulness becomes the source of worth, empathy has stopped being love and has become protection. At its core, this sensitivity once helped someone survive. But now, survival may no longer require it, and perhaps the deepest act of empathy is turning that same attention inward. Some people love cautiously, not because they lack feeling, but because they feel intensely. They hold back, observe, analyze. Even when trust begins, a part of them remains hidden, guarded, doubtful. A quiet voice inside warns, "Be careful. This could hurt again." For someone whose safety was broken early, vulnerability stopped being simple. The memory of abandonment can feel louder than present affection. Love arrives, but fear follows. This is the third trait, fear of true intimacy. This reaction is not exaggerated. It is the unconscious recognizing old patterns. Jung explained how unconscious complexes can take over awareness. In relationships, this may appear as sudden withdrawal, intense jealousy, or emotional distance. Beneath it is often an inner child who remembers exactly how painful trust once was. Outwardly, this person may appear confident or self-sufficient. They may claim independence, but inside, a buried longing remains. When closeness grows, fear emerges as control, irritation, silence, or distance. Relationships feel like exposure instead of safety. If you love someone like this, patience matters. If you see yourself here, courage is needed. Not to rush forward, but to realize the present does not always repeat the past. Not all love harms, not every approach is abandonment. Sometimes it is simply someone choosing to stay. How often have you heard, "You're so strong," and you smile, thank them, and move on, while later that night, you break down alone? Some people became strong because they had no alternative. When life collapses too early, you either hold everything together yourself or fall with it. This leads to the fourth trait, the image of strength paired with private collapse. On the surface, everything appears stable. The voice is calm, the posture confident, but behind it is deep exhaustion. Showing weakness feels unacceptable. Expressing pain feels impossible. Jung referred to this as the persona, the social mask we all wear. But when pain becomes overwhelming, the mask stops being optional. It becomes armor. The person becomes what the world needs and loses touch with what they feel. The danger is that strength becomes confinement. No one offers help because everyone assumes you are fine. What appears controlled is often fear of falling apart in front of others. Life turns into maintaining appearances while slowly breaking internally, and when the breakdown happens, it happens alone. True strength is not never struggling. It is being able to say, "Today is hard," and trusting someone will listen without judgment. That moment may be where the armor begins to loosen. The fifth trait is heightened sensory sensitivity. Loud sounds overwhelm, bright lights irritate, crowds exhaust. The mind tries to stay composed, but the body reacts first. The heart races, breathing tightens. The urge to escape appears without explanation. This is not exaggeration. It is a nervous system trained by danger, a history where safety was unpredictable. Emotional pain leaves traces in the body. Jung said what remains unconscious returns as fate. In this case, it returns as physical sensation. This sensitivity allows deep perception, but when rooted in trauma, it becomes heavy. The body reacts to threats the mind no longer remembers. Healing begins by recognizing that discomfort is not weakness, it is memory. The sixth trait is the need for control. Not dominance, but protection. At some point, chaos felt unbearable. Control became survival. Planning, anticipating, checking, these are not about power. They are about fear. From the outside, it looks like responsibility. Inside, it is constant tension. Jung noted that the ego tries to control what the unconscious avoids. Here, control blocks helplessness that was never resolved. Letting go does not happen all at once. Healing begins by realizing that not everything must be controlled to survive. The seventh trait is silence as refuge, not withdrawal out of rejection, but rest. Silence becomes shelter, a space where expectations stop. Jung understood retreat as renewal, but when silence becomes a wall, it risks turning into isolation. Silence can heal, but it needs a door, a way to let someone in when ready. Because silence can be home, but no one should be locked inside it forever. And this brings us to a final thought. Saying, "I trust you," sounds simple. But for someone who was hurt while trusting, those words carry weight far beyond language. The gesture stops halfway. The words stay trapped in the throat. The body tightens, not because the emotion is missing, but because the risk feels overwhelming. The eighth trait of those who have suffered too much is a heart that is deeply guarded, locked down, carefully protected. Not out of arrogance, coldness, or lack of feeling, but because the last time it was open, the pain was intense. The ego adapts to survive. It creates invisible barriers. It filters experiences before trusting them. It questions before allowing closeness. It studies gestures, tone, pauses, even the time between messages. Love may appear, but it is examined closely before being allowed in. This process is exhausting for both sides. Affection rarely flows freely. There is always an underlying tension, a quiet question of whether trust is truly safe. The soul rests like someone sleeping lightly, always alert. Jung spoke about the difference between living through fear and living through trust. In this case, fear became the lens. Everything is interpreted through past pain. Even when things are going well, a voice inside warns, "Stay prepared. This could change." The unconscious does not recognize that time has passed. It reacts as if the danger is still present. Distrust becomes a method of self-protection, but it also blocks genuine connection. Deep relationships require some level of openness, risk, and surrender. Without that, love cannot fully exist. Ironically, those who protect their hearts the most are often the ones who desire love most deeply. They are not avoiding connection. They are avoiding reliving the pain. Yet overprotection carries its own harm. The balance may lie in moving slowly, testing trust step by step, neither closing everything nor running away. Because perhaps this time, love did not arrive to wound, but to remain. The ninth trait of those who have suffered too much is a strong sense of justice shaped by pain. It does not come from theory or speeches, but from lived experience. Betrayal, silencing, neglect, and the absence of protection when it was needed most. Someone who has endured injustice develops a sharp sensitivity to it and refuses to tolerate it again. Even small signs of disrespect activate old alarms. Jung understood that emotional complexes awaken when the present touches an old wound. This sense of justice is one of those responses. It belongs to someone who was once silenced and now refuses to remain quiet. Others may see this as overreaction or impulsiveness, but it is not. It is the psyche saying, "Not again." This trait often appears early. Children who witnessed wrong but had no power to stop it. Teenagers who resisted unfair rules. Adults who defend values with the urgency of someone protecting their younger self. The archetype here is the moral warrior, fighting not for perfection, but for dignity and respect. When balanced, this trait is honorable. When driven only by pain, it can harden into rigidity. The challenge is to preserve justice without turning it into armor, to know when to stand firm and when to soften. Those who understand injustice deeply also have the ability to protect without punishing, to confront without losing themselves in conflict. Pain sharpens perception, not only to recognize injustice, but to notice what others overlook. Those who have suffered deeply often develop a sensitivity to other people's pain, even when it is hidden. They sense unease behind smiles. They notice what remains unsaid. This is the 10th trait, the ability to perceive the invisible in others. This awareness is not mystical. It is memory. Those who once felt unseen learn to see others clearly. Those who cried quietly know how to listen to silence. Jung suggested that integrating personal pain allows recognition of collective pain. This emotional awareness appears when needed, without seeking attention, and often changes everything. However, this sensitivity carries responsibility. Those who feel deeply for others risk neglecting themselves. The balance lies in caring without disappearing, being present without absorbing everything. This perception is a gift, but also a reminder that pain, when processed consciously, becomes support rather than weight. Yet seeing others so clearly has a cost. While reading emotions and signals, a question may arise inside. Am I a burden? Have you ever apologized without reason? Felt guilty simply for existing? The 11th trait of those who have suffered too much is the fear of being a burden. This feeling is quiet but persistent. It appears in minimizing needs, hiding tears, saying, "I'm fine," to avoid concern. It often begins in childhood, when emotions were dismissed or treated as inconvenient. Children who were ignored or silenced grow into adults who believe their feelings are too much. These individuals are often kind, dependable, and considerate, but constantly afraid of occupying space. Asking for help brings guilt. Receiving care feels uncomfortable. Jung described this as unconscious guilt, formed around a core belief: I matter only if I don't inconvenience others. Living this way means existing cautiously, as if permission is required to breathe. But needing support is human. Vulnerability is human. Recognizing this fear is already healing. When you realize that taking up space is not a wrongdoing, something shifts. Life becomes less about avoiding inconvenience and more about simply being. Despite this fear, the soul often finds comfort in small details: the warmth of a cup in your hands, a quiet message asking if you arrived safely, the sound of rain while the world moves on. This leads to the 12th trait: appreciation for small moments. This is not romanticizing pain. It is what pain leaves behind. When chaos has stripped everything away, simple things gain meaning. Those who have lost much learn to recognize peace in subtle forms. Jung associated this with wisdom gained after facing the shadow, a quieter, more attentive way of living. This depth is sometimes mistaken for fragility, but it is strength. It reflects emotional maturity and presence. The ability to value small things belongs to those who understand impermanence and choose gratitude. The final trait of those who have suffered too much is the search for purpose after pain. Survival alone is not enough. The soul seeks meaning. Pain wants direction. Many people who endure hardship begin looking for a reason: to help others, to create, to guide, to be present in ways they once needed. Jung viewed this as individuation, transforming suffering into awareness and offering. The pain remains as memory, but it no longer controls. It becomes guidance. Purpose grows quietly, not from appearance, but from truth. This is not escape. It is growth, a recognition that pain is part of the story, not the entire identity. From this place, life begins to expand again. You are not your pain, but you do not need to hide it either. Every trait discussed here emerged as protection. Some became shields, others guides. All were attempts to preserve something valuable within you. Jung said, "The tree that reaches the sky must have roots that reach into the depths." What you have become is inseparable from what you endured. Being here after everything is already strength. This is not about claiming everything is healed. It is about seeing yourself with more compassion. The pain that shaped you no longer has to lead. It can walk beside you quietly. If this video resonated with you, consider subscribing. We continue exploring the psyche, pain, and healing with clarity and respect. And if you stayed until the end, leave this phrase in the comments: "My pain taught me too." You never know who might see it and feel less alone. Take care. You deserve it.